Good morning. I'm Reverend Paul Beckel. Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. All who come in the spirit of goodwill are welcome here. I'll go further than that. Maybe you're still a little groggy and you haven't yet conjured up a full dose of goodwill. Still, you're welcome here. Maybe just start with a willingness to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. No? Maybe those within a 10-foot radius? Well, if you're still having trouble finding space in your heart this morning, hang in there. And let's make it a goal that by the end of the hour, we'll have found new energy to rise above pettiness, enough trust to greet the world without defensiveness, or at least the wisdom to mind your own damn business.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Kenline, a longtime member of this fellowship. And every Sunday, we open our time of worship by lighting a chalice. And for our chalice words this morning, I was inspired by an experience I had this summer sitting underneath a very large curly willow tree. In Unitarian Universalism, we draw our inspiration from many sources. At first, I was struck by how thick and solid and immovable the trunk was and the roots going into the ground. But then looking up, it just seemed like everything was in motion. Every winding bough and every curly branch and every twirly leaf seemed to be in a constant dance with the weather and with all of life. This morning, we're going to be focusing on hypocrisy and judgment and asking ourselves questions like, how can I speak up for what is righteous without becoming overly self-righteous? How can I own my own truth while being truthful with myself about my own contradictions and hypocrisies? How can I stand for what I believe without locking into a defensive stance? So, honoring the wisdom of the curly willow, may we take the time it takes to grow a strong, grounded foundation and root system. May we explore, play, and grow in new directions, flexible, fully alive, and dancing with the changes. And may we notice what needs to be released and let it flutter easily to the ground. Now, please join me in reciting our covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant. Now please rise in body and spirit. We're going to sing hymn number 1009 in the turquoise hymnal, but it's very easy, and you may not, the words will be on your screen. And this has 3 parts. We're going to start with a droney kind of first part that's all on one note. She's the drone. They're both the drones. Then we'll come in with the melody, and then we'll come in with the descant, and you get to sing on whatever part you like. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. Breathe out, breathe in.
gather around for a story.
Hi. Want to hear a story? It's called Jamaica's Blue Marker. Great, you're going to love this story, I think. Jamaica closed her eyes and thought about her picture. Mrs. Worth always said to think first and then to draw. Jamaica opened her eyes and drew a tree on her big sheet of paper. Then she drew leaves falling off the tree and colored them yellow. Jamaica, Mrs. Worth said, would you please share your markers with Russell? He doesn't have any. He never has anything he needs, Jamaica thought. But she said, okay, even though she didn't want to share her markers with him. Russell brought his paper to Jamaica's table. He sat down beside her and he grabbed her blue marker. She didn't pay any attention to Russell. After a while, she peeked at his paper. Russell was making squiggly circles all over his page. We're supposed to draw a fall picture, Russell, Jamaica said. Who says? Mrs. Worth, don't you ever listen? I don't have to. Russell reached out with the blue marker and made a streak across Jamaica's picture. Russell, stop, Jamaica shouted, but Russell scribbled all over Jamaica's yellow-leafed tree. Mrs. Worth, Jamaica cried, Russell wrecked my picture. Mrs. Worth hurried over to their table. Russell, did you do this? She held up Jamaica's picture. Mrs. Worth couldn't get Russell to say, I'm sorry. He had to go sit alone and work on spelling until art was over. Look what Russell did, Jamaica showed her father and brother when she got home. I tried, but I couldn't make another one as good as this. When she looked at the ugly blue squiggles, she had to swallow hard not to cry. Russell is a mean brat. Did you tell Mrs. Worth what happened? Her father asked. Jamaica nodded. Russell can't use my markers again. I shared with him because he didn't have any. He never has what he's supposed to have, but that's no reason to be mean. No, her father said, Russell shouldn't have messed up your picture. The next time they had art, Jamaica was glad Russell didn't sit at her table. Then he couldn't bother her, and she didn't have to share her markers with him either. But at recess, Russell threw sand at her and chased 2 second-grade girls, so he had to go to the office. Before he came back, Mrs. Worth said, I would like to tell you something. Can you keep a secret? Yes, Jamaica shouted with her classmates. We are going to have a going-away party for Russell on Friday. His father has a new job in another town. They will be moving over the weekend. I thought that you might like to make cards to say goodbye. Then Russell will have something to remember us by. Mrs. Worth passed out paper, and then she showed everyone how to fold the paper into a card. Jamaica didn't want to make a card for Russell. She was glad he was moving. Then he wouldn't bother her anymore, and she put the paper in her desk. At supper, Jamaica said, I like living here. I like my house and my room and the tree in the front yard. I like my school, too. I'm glad you do, her mother said. I wouldn't like to move. Who said anything about moving? Ossie asked. Russell is moving. Lucky you, he won't mess up your pictures anymore, Ossie said. I wonder how Russell feels about moving, Dad said. He might be upset. Has he talked about it?
Or sad.
Russell doesn't say anything. He just gets in trouble, Jamaica said. Russell didn't come to the classroom on Friday morning. He was with his mother in the office. Jamaica looked at his empty desk. Next week, Russell would be gone. He wouldn't be at his desk ever again. She decided to make a card for Russell. She got out the blank card and her markers too.
That's a good thing.
You're right. But just then, Mrs. Worth asked, "Who are my helpers this week?" Jamaica raised her hand. "Jamaica, could you collect the cards and put them in Russell's desk? Brianna and Tomas, I'd like for you to clear the activity table for the plates and cups." Jamaica went from desk to desk to pick up the cards. She put the whole stack in Russell's desk. As she closed the desk, Russell came in with his mother. The party started. They played games for a while and ate cake. Russell opened his desk and took out all the cards. "Look, Mom, everybody made a card for me." Not everybody, Jamaica thought. She took the blue marker out of her marker bag, and then she ran up to Russell. "This is for you, Russell." She handed him the marker. "You can use it at your new school." "But you might need it," he said. "You like to draw. You draw the best pictures in the class. What if you have to color the sky?" "Someone will share with me." "Thanks," he said. "You're lucky you get to..." Excuse me. "You're lucky you get to stay here." Now Jamaica knew how Russell felt about moving. "I wish you didn't have to move," she said. When Jamaica waved goodbye to Russell, she noticed that his mother was carrying his goodbye cards. Russell held up the blue marker and waved it at her as if he'd won a prize. "Goodbye, Russell. I'll miss you," Jamaica said, and she meant it. The end.
Hey, I have a baby cousin, and his name is Luke.
I have a question here.
Mr. Connor, I think the reason why Russell was being so mean is because he had big feelings about moving. So he was
Makes a lot of
just
sense.
just naturally challenged.
So now, as you go off to your classrooms, we're going to sing to you.
I'm a member of the board, and I'm here to reassure you about Paul's retirement and our search for a new minister. But first, I have a story. So here's my story. When I was pregnant with my first child, I did all the Lamaze classes. We had to drive like 30 miles one way every week, do these classes, getting all ready. And on the last night of the classes, they showed a film, a reel-to-reel film. If some of you will remember those. And it was a film of an actual birth. And I was like stupefied. I mean, it was like, what? So on the way home, the 30 miles home, it's dark, it's in the country, windy roads. I'm sitting in the passenger seat. I'm not saying anything to the father of this child. And so he says, how you doing over there? And I said, wow, I don't think I can do this. And there's a really long pause. And he says, finally, takes a breath, well, I don't see any way out of it now. So I want you to know right now that that's not the way this is going to go. Although I did end up with a fabulous daughter, so, you know, it goes that way a little bit. But kind of like a pregnancy, the search process is long, and I'm sure we'll be anxious at times. Unlike the pregnancy, it's well supported by the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is kind of like our mothership, which I knew nothing about back then. It's also supported by a strong board and by you, our Buff community. Following UUA best practices, there'll be 3 phases. And the first one is going to be to celebrate Paul and his contribution to our community over the past almost 11 years. At the first of the year, we will begin the process of finding an interim minister who will serve Buff for 2 years. And while that interim ministry is going on, we, you, the board, with UUA support, will begin the process of finding exactly who we need for a longer-term ministry. We will begin this whole process with a Q&A in November. And in the meantime, please reach out to your board members, because we've got this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hank Ohana, and I'd like to welcome all of you. And after the service, we'll be having coffee hour downstairs. And if you are newish or brand new even to the coming here, there are red coffee mugs, which if you would like people to speak to you and learn more about you and welcome you in, grab one of those so that we know that you're a newcomer and we can make sure to welcome you. Also, this week, there will be a potluck after the service downstairs, and if you did not bring anything, do not worry. You're welcome to come, and there will be food for everyone. Also, Barbara Ellis Quinn, are you here? Where are you? Okay, good. I'm going to have you stand up because Barbara is going to be leading a tour after the service as well. So if you'd like to familiarize yourself with this building, Barbara's your gal. And Barbara, will you be waiting in the back? She'll be waiting in the back. With a sign. And last and certainly not least, and you'll see it in your order of service and also in the midweek update, we are restarting Dining with Friends, which is an opportunity to get to know people in smaller and a little bit more intimate circumstances. So these are usually dinners, but they can be what you'd like to create. If you'd like to host a brunch or a dessert and coffee or whatever you'd like to choose, you may. So what these are their gatherings in people's homes. We hope that enough people will sign up to be hosts, and then you'll be contacted and assigned to a host, and usually these are groupings of 6 to 8 other buffsters, and it's an opportunity to get to know each other better. And have a little bit more fun, because coffee hours are great, but sometimes to really get into deeper conversations, you just need more time than that. So there will be a basket outside in the foyer, and there's forms for you to fill out, and please put them in the basket. I'll be collecting those. You can also register for these online, which is, again, in your order of service, also in the midweek update, but if you just go to buff.org/diningwithfriends, it'll pop up the form. Thank you. I hope to see you all at some of these events.
Thanks, Hank. I just want to note that the sign-up is for hosts and participants, so either way, please do. For the last couple of weeks, we've been reflecting on our Unitarian Universalist commitment to creedlessness, our culture of inclusion, which doesn't mean we're tolerant of anything and everything, including bigoted beliefs and cruel behavior. But it does mean that we find it unhelpful to demand that everyone profess one particular set of beliefs. We do not pretend that we own the one and only way toward liberation of body, mind, and spirit. But we do make a point to affirm and promote an ethic of love and inclusion. And we do covenant with one another not to turn our heads, pretending not to see when others are treated badly. This means sometimes that in order to do the right thing, we have to do the opposite of what our culture has taught us. Step outside the protections of conformity. Speak truth to power. Even engage in civil disobedience. The trouble is, that's hard. It's so much more convenient to just go along with expectations, not make waves, or give lip service to moral courage while hoping that someone else will put our righteous words into practice. Or even simpler, call other people hypocrites and leave it at that. Here's a story from the Gospel of John. Jesus sat on the ground in the temple courtyard, and people gathered round. The leaders of the temple brought in a woman, made her stand before the group, and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, we are commanded to stone such women. Now, what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him of false teachings. But Jesus bent down and began to write in the dust with his finger. When they persisted in questioning, he straightened up and said, "Let any one of you who is without sin throw the first stone." At this, people began to go away one at a time until only the woman was left standing there. Jesus asked her, "Where has everyone gone? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." In some traditions, the same scriptural passages are repeated from one year to another. As a child, no one would tell me what adultery was. Just that any thoughts or behaviors, even peripheral to sex, were terrible. So I appreciated this story in just a general sense, that being merciful was a good thing. And hearing it year after year, I found it to be a powerful message about the dangers of judging others. But eventually I started asking, wait, what's the matter with this picture? What about the man she was with? Why was it not even a question as to whether or not to stone or forgive him? And why did Jesus assume that she had sinned at all, just because some self-righteous people accused her? It was still later that I began to understand the story in the context of women's reproductive rights. Why is it only the woman who has to deal with the consequences of pregnancy. If she wants to become pregnant, she bears the burden. If she has been abandoned by the other party involved in the pregnancy, she has to deal with the consequences. If she cannot have a child for other reasons, if she has been raped, if she is the victim of incest, no matter how old she may be or how young, she has to deal with the consequences. In Wausau, Wisconsin, where I lived before Bellingham, there was a women's health clinic, the equivalent of Planned Parenthood. Our congregation had a supportive relationship with them. We collected money, hosted forums with my friend the rabbi and leaders of several mainline Christian congregations which were adamantly pro-choice. And while not creating more turmoil for women and girls who are entering the clinic, we decided we didn't want to counter-protest the protesters and make it even more uncomfortable. But we wrote letters to the staff at the clinic explicitly as religious people, saying that we supported what they do. One time I was speaking with their executive director, Lou, in his office, and there on his desk was a little box that looked kind of like a fire alarm pole, handmade of wood with a little hammer attached to the side. Behind the glass cover was a stone, and etched into the glass were the words, "The first stone." The implication, as I understood it anyway, was that in an emergency, when you just had to lash out and condemn someone, but you couldn't find any justification to do so, well, here, break the glass. Here's the first stone. When I told him that, I thought, that was a powerful message, he said, "Would you like me to make one for you?" Well, here it is. Maybe that's too subtle. Maybe it's a little too easy to look at this and tense up and call out the hypocrisy of others who might be comforted to have an emergency stone on hand. But I also find it perversely funny. Enough sometimes to help break down my own defensiveness, my own righteousness, and to ask myself, oh, are there times that I would like to have quick access to an officially authorized stone to hurl at somebody? It's hard to look into the mirror and ask, in what ways have I been hypocritical, overly judgmental? I want you to look your own mirror, and without getting defensive, because there certainly are times to stand against injustice and to call out rhetoric intended to stir up division. But if we leave here today with nothing more than aggravation about what other people do and say, and cynicism about other people's hypocrisy, then despite all of the smiles and hugs and donuts, we will have wasted this gift of beloved community, this opportunity to compare our own words and our own deeds without shame, but with integrity. So let's take a moment now to open our eyes, not to drown ourselves in fire and brimstone, but to see ourselves clearly, that we might begin again in love. When they persisted in asking, feeling glee that they had caught him in a moral trap, Jesus said, "The one who is without sin should throw the first stone." And from the back of the crowd, a pebble came flying. It landed at Jesus' feet, and he looked up and sighed, "Oh, Mom." You're always so patient with me when I get a little choked up, and this is a personal story, so. A couple of weeks ago, our son Rick called us. And in an uneasy voice, he told us that he needed to tell us something. "I was out on my bike," he began, and immediately, both Jane and I pictured him being hit by a car. I confirmed this with Jane afterwards. She was thinking the same thing. "But what?" we gasped. "No, it's okay," he said. "I'm okay. It was just, I stopped at a stop sign where a guy was standing, and suddenly he yelled, 'What did you say?' And he slapped me hard across the face. And I turned to him confused, and he slugged me in the jaw so hard that it knocked me off my bike." "When did this happen?" we asked. "Oh, it was a couple of days ago. I didn't want to tell you because you'd probably be worried." "So what did you do?" we asked. "I just got up and sped off as fast as I could. I can't really remember anything about how I got home. But I was really dizzy still when I got home and nauseated, and actually I still am sometimes, and I have this really bad headache. So I thought I'd better tell you. And anyway," he said, "Emma, his wife, drove me to the ER, and they did an MRI, and apparently it looks fine. But I'm still kind of dizzy and nauseated sometimes." "So did you go to work the next day?" we asked. "Oh, it was kind of convenient. Our babysitter was away, so someone needed to stay home with Arthur, his 18-month-old. So I did that." "That sounds real restful," we said. I'm sure I'm getting all of these details wrong, but suffice it to say that over the next few days, Rick had friends and brothers and a partner to help him with meals and transportation and childcare, and he was able to use his accumulated sick time at work. With the babysitter away at a family emergency, Emma, an elementary school teacher, was even able to bring Arthur to school one day. Somewhere along the line, with Rick still unable to remember parts of what happened, it was determined that he had had a concussion and that he definitely needed more quiet, stillness, and no screen time. "But I'm fine," he said, "except," and there was real pain in his voice. He said, "It's just terrible that I've gotten all this help and instant medical care and Emma watching over me." "Well, this guy, he must have been psychotic or on drugs. He clearly didn't know what he's doing, and there's nobody out there looking out for him. It's really not fair," he said. And my fears and worries about Rick being hurt were overcome by my deep respect. How fortunate I am to be reinforced in what I would like to think of myself as my capacity for mercy, to know this man of such deep compassion, selfless absence of entitlement, and any sense that he deserves all the blessings life has given to him. And then I knew he was going to be okay, because he had a larger sense of what it meant to be okay. Now, Rick is no pushover. He climbs mountains. He once biked from here to Panama. He's an active and adamant fighter against systems of bigotry and inequity. But he knows the difference between punching up toward those in power versus punching down at those without. This is not a story about being okay with abuse or blithely forgiving and forgetting. It's not a simple thing for each of us to continue developing our conscience in such a way that we can always recognize the difference between what we should fight against and what we should let go. Our living tradition draws upon the words and deeds of prophetic women and men who challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Who are the people in your life, old or young, living or dead, fictional or real, whose words and deeds have inspired you, guided you to accept the transforming power of love? And I don't mean transformation along some grand arc toward perfection, but toward day-to-day choices, little transformations, so that instead of being judgy about other people being judgy, we might be nudged as needed toward becoming our best selves. Able to say and to repeat as needed. May I have the serenity to hold goodwill toward the people I cannot change, and courage to change the person I can, and the wisdom to know that's me. May I have serenity to hold goodwill toward the people I cannot change, and courage to change the person I can, and the wisdom to know that's me. And now, as I invite the ushers forward to receive our morning offering, I invite you to be generous in whatever way you can, knowing that your financial gifts are so important, but taking the collective wisdom of the people around you and living it in the world beyond these walls is also a great gift. Last week, I was speaking about irony, and I spoke so long that decided to just say we're going to skip the final song, How Can I Keep From Singing? And then Shersti pointed out to me afterward, how could you keep us from singing? What can I keep from singing? So let's stand together and sing number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Sometime before you leave, I encourage you to look somebody in the eye and say, I am glad you are here today. But you need to be conscious of something. It has to be sincere, not just off the cuff. It has to be sincere. So, not yet. Maybe you can say that to more than one person. Maybe you can say that to someone you've never even met. Or maybe it'll take a few minutes to conjure up such spirit of goodwill towards someone. Maybe it'll take more than a few minutes. It might take hours. But that's okay. I'm going to be here for a while. In the meantime, let's circle around.